Hi class, we are doing a three-part series on fractions. Today's part is just on halves, fourths, and eighths. Our learning targets are I can define numerator and denominator, and I can represent fractions using paper folding and symbols. Our first thing we need to talk about is what is a fraction. So I have that represented a few different ways here. So our first one is our whole has been divided into two equal parts, and I've shaded in one of those two parts. So that represents 1/2 of our whole. This whole has also been separated into two parts, but they're not equal parts, not equal shares. So that doesn't represent 1/2. In order for it to be a fraction, they have to be equal parts. We have to have equal sharing. This whole here has been divided into 4 equal parts, and we've shaded in one of those parts. So 1 out of 4 is the same as saying 1/4 is shaded. And then 3/4, 3 out of the 4 are unshaded. In this whole, I've divided it into 3 equal parts, so thirds. We've shaded in 2/3 and left 1/3 unshaded. We can also think about people, or different things like pizza or brownies and things when we talk about fractions. So I've represented that with a kind of a silly picture here. I have 5 friends, and so 5 is my whole. My whole group of friends is 5. So 2 of my 5 friends have green hair. So we represent that like this. 2/5 of our friends have green hair. And then 3 of our friends have purple hair. So we represent that with 3/5 have purple hair. All right, we have some vocabulary for you to put down in your vocabulary section of your note catcher. Our first word is fraction. So a fraction, the definition of a fraction is a part of a whole. Go ahead and pause your video and write that definition down. Then denominator is our next word. A denominator is the bottom number in a fraction. It is the number of equal parts that the whole is divided into. Go ahead and write that vocabulary word and definition down in your note catcher. And our last word is numerator. The numerator is the top number in a fraction. It's the number of parts you are interested in. So go ahead and make sure you have all those written down with their definitions, and then we'll describe it a little bit more in detail here. So I have this fraction 3/5. The top number is the numerator, the bottom number is the denominator. Okay, so if we have, this is kind of faded a little bit, but this is our whole. So our whole is divided into 5 parts, 5 equal parts. That's our denominator. That's where that comes from. Okay, the number of parts we are interested in is the number of parts that are shaded. So that's 3. So 3/5 are what we're interested in. 3 out of 5 are shaded. Now it's time for you to try it. So in your practice work part of your note catcher, I want you to try these 4 questions. So the fraction that we're talking about is 3/4. So I want you to write down number 1. What is the denominator in 3/4? Which number is the denominator? Is it the 3 or the 4? Feel free to go back to the previous slide, rewind if you forget what that is. Then what does the denominator tell us? So what does it mean? What does it tell us about what we're looking at? If it's 3/4 of a pizza, what does the denominator tell us? Then number 3, what is the numerator? And then number 4, what does the numerator tell us? Again, go ahead and rewind if you forget what those mean, because we want to learn those. All right, so we've come to the part, you're going to need these a lot for your math work, and we might probably use them in CGI too. They're called fraction strips. So you're going to need, first of all, you're going to need your envelope that you used for your geometry figures. You can go ahead and get rid of those geometry figures, but keep the envelope because we'll need them for our fraction strips that we'll be cutting out. So you're going to need your Unit 12 DAB, and you're going to turn to page 199. It looks like this, called Making Fraction Strips. So you're going to need some colored pencils. You'll need a yellow, red, brown, and then a gray, or you can just use a regular pencil that you write with for that. So you're going to color your top 4 strips, 1 yellow, 1 red, 1 brown, and 1 gray. Then you're going to carefully cut out. We want to cut out on those dotted lines very carefully. We don't want jagged edges. We want nice straight edges so that we can have equal parts. So you're going to cut out those 4 strips then that will be colored. They don't have to be colored very perfectly. Here's an example of one of mine, just as long as you can tell what color they are. We want something that's going to look like this in the end. This is in your math book on page 336. This is a fraction chart using the same kind of idea. So that's where we're going with all of this. So number 4 says, after you've cut out those 4 strips, then label the yellow strip whole. Don't fold it. So here's mine. Yours should look kind of like this. Like I said, doesn't have to be perfect coloring, but we want it to say the word whole because this represents our whole. We're not going to fold this into sections, it's one whole. Number 5, fold the red strip into 2 equal parts. So I take my red strip, fold it into 2 equal parts. I want to make sure they both line up on this edge. And then when I fold it, I want to do kind of my fingernail down the side and do like a nice crisp edge on that. Okay, and then you want to draw a line on that nice fold that you just did. You want to take a ruler and line it up and draw a nice line there. We don't want any squiggly lines, so we want to use a ruler to find that fold and draw that line. And I used marker with mine. You don't have to use marker, but it just makes it easier to see. And then label each part 1/2, and you can see I did that here and here. Number 6, fold the brown strip into 4 equal parts and do the same process but label each part 1/4. So here's how I did that. I folded it in half first, then I folded it in half again. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 equal parts. And then I drew my lines with my ruler, and I labeled each part 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4. We have a total of 4/4 or 1 whole. If you hold it up to your 1 whole, any of these, they would be the exact same size. But we're dividing them into fractions by folding them. Number 7, you're going to fold your gray strip into 8 equal parts. Do the same process, but label each part 1/8. So here's how I did that. I folded it in half first, then I folded it in half again, like we did for our 4ths, and then you fold it in half again, and make sure each time that you're lining up those edges, because they have to be equal parts. They cannot be, you know, some of them longer than others. They have to be the same size, each part. Then I want to make a nice crisp fold. Use your fingernails if you can. Then unfold it, and then you'll draw, see I already have mine drawn, but then you're going to use your ruler and draw lines on each fold, and I had to do this too. And you'll have 8 equal parts, and you're going to label them 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8 for a total of 8/8 or 1 whole. So that's it for your directions for your fraction strips. You will probably have to look at that again for directions for how to do that during math class, and that's fine. So to show 3/8, so if I have my eighths here, to show 3/8, you need to use the fraction strip that is divided into what? Would it make sense to show 3/8 on this strip showing halves, this strip showing fourths, or this strip showing eighths? It would make sense to show 3/8 using a fraction strip that is divided into eighths. To show halves, would it make sense to use the eighths? Probably not. The fourths or the halves? It would make sense to use the strip that is divided into halves. And to show 3/4, we would not use the eighths or the halves, we would use the strip that is divided into 4 equal pieces or fourths. If you have any questions about what we talked about in this video, feel free to write those down in the questions section of your note catcher. Go ahead and summarize what you've learned about fractions and denominators and numerators in the summarize section, and be ready to learn about the next type of fractions.